was not completed this morning. Good morning. Today the election signs will be collected from our lawns. Each provincial party and many individuals will debrief what happened yesterday and during the past 6 weeks of the election cycle. Bills must be paid for all the newspaper, TV, and radio ads, the travel, the hair and makeup. Many speechwriters and strategists will be let go because their candidate did not win a seat. In the legislature precinct, dozens of clerks and secretaries will be looking for work because the MLA they work for has been kicked to the curb. Moving vans will come in, moving vans will go out. Down at King's Printer, thousands of new business cards and reams of stationery will be printed with new names. And here in our Unitarian Universalist community, we will try to read the tea leaves. What does yesterday's BC election mean for us individually, for our neighborhoods, and for the future of our province? One of our Unitarian principles is that we affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. I have never met a Unitarian who was ambivalent about politics, who did not care about who was running, who was in government, and what the laws were. I have never met a Unitarian who could say, everything in society is perfect, and all 3 levels of government are doing a great job. Have you known a person, Unitarian or not, who was like that? I have known plenty of Unitarians who are proud of an MP, MLA, or city councillor for one reason or another. Years ago, comedian Rick Mercer interviewed former federal NDP leader Ed Broadbent. Many Unitarians already liked Mr. Broadbent. Rick asked if he was a religious man, and Broadbent replied, "No, I'm not, but I'm probably Unitarian." Canadian Unitarians swooned. At the Unitarian Church on West Saanich Road, many are proud to call Lynn Hunter a friend. She was the federal NDP member of Parliament for Saanich in 1988 to 1993. One of Lynn's aides back in 1988 was a young John Horgan, who went on to become Premier of our province. Lynn was later elected to Victoria City Council in 2008, a post she held until her defeat in the 2011 election. Jan Greenwood, put up your hand, Jan. Jan was elected to Victoria City Council in '97, and in 1990 got 7,700 votes to get re-elected. The internet doesn't lie, Jan. Jan loaned me her copy of George Lakoff's book, Don't Think of an Elephant, Know Your Values and Frame the Debate, about how progressives need to learn to frame their ideas, similar to how conservatives have learned to frame theirs. And one of the big lessons, I think, in the past month has been the framing on both sides. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Unitarians are likely on the spectrum of values and voting, but I believe most Canadian Unitarians are progressive, left-leaning, pro-environment individualists. What do I mean by that? I lifted a handy and simple chart from a website called This versus That. Let's look at how this chart contrasts conservative and progressive attributes.
It'll take me a second to get there.
I surprised Amanda with these last night. There. Good. And this is partly because many of us know this or feel this, but it's interesting to see it. So on economic policy, for instance, conservatives say that they are free market, limited government intervention, and progressives, we like government intervention and wealth redistribution. On social issues, conservative values tend to be traditional values, whatever tradition they're talking about, emphasis on family and religion, whereas progressive values are emphasis on equality and individual rights. Taxation, you see there, lower taxes, smaller government, versus progressive taxation and larger government. Healthcare, private healthcare, market-based solutions, versus universal healthcare, government-funded. Environment, less regulation and prioritize economic growth, versus more regulation, prioritize environmental protection. On immigration, strict immigration policies prioritize border security versus the progressive, more lenient immigration policies and prioritizing inclusivity. And finally, on education, local control and school choice versus progressive federal involvement and focus on equal access. You see, there's Americanisms in there, but I knew we'd be able to translate it. Now that we have a clearer or common idea of what we mean by conservative and progressive, let's look at the results, as such as they are, of yesterday's BC election. So there's what it looks like as of actually 10 o'clock, 6:09 this morning. David Eby, the Premier, 46 seats, Conservative John Rustad, 45, and Greens, 2. At least 4 and possibly 8 ridings have to have mandatory recount this week. There are mail-in ballots, but so many, there's a formula that if 1 in 100, if the margin of error is closer than 1 in 100, it goes to mandatory recount. And there's 4 or 5 of those. And the mail-ins will make a difference in some of those ridings. Hold that, just keep that up for now. So based on what we know, who will be Premier of BC? So David Eby, under British Columbia rules, he gets to keep being Premier even if John Rustad gets another couple of seats. And so what happens is that the Premier gets to continue being the Premier, and the opposition gets to try and bring him down through a vote of confidence or some other policy. I didn't completely understand it. It was very late last night when one of the talking heads was explaining how British Columbia goes. It's not automatic that that Eby would go to the Lieutenant Governor and resign, and Rustad would automatically go and become ask for permission to start a government. And what we also see is, like 2017, those 2 Green seats are important because they could, by helping with a confidence and supply agreement or just with a general nudge, they could keep a government afloat. One other thing, another question I have, and maybe we can discuss this more in the forum. What does it mean that 0 independent candidates won a seat? They were largely Kevin Falcon's BC United candidates, or well-known local people, and they may have taken votes away from either John Rustad's Conservatives, or in some cases, from all other parties. The independent in West Vancouver, Capilano, got 5,000 votes. Imagine if those 5,000 votes had gone to one party or the other, or even been split. In Courtney Comox, which I believe is being recounted this week, an independent got over 600 votes. Those votes would have changed the result in Courtney Comox. There's a map of the province of British Columbia also showing the breakdown. Here it is. We can also see that metropolitan British Columbia, Vancouver mostly, and a little bit of Victoria, is NDP and a little tiny bit of Conservatives. And then the countryside is Conservative. All of northern BC, most of the interior of BC. I'm not sure which riding Amanda Pat is in, whether it's one of the NDP or one of the Conservative ones. But I know Salmon Arm went Conservative yesterday. And that's largely, it's John Rustad country, northern BC. Cousin in Terrace was surprised that the Conservative won, and won handily. That's not unusual in British Columbia, that the interior votes one way and metropolitan votes the other way. And it has a lot to do with population flows. And then what is the role of the 2 Green MLAs? Now, I'm not sure if they expected that they were going to be the 2 Green MLAs that were going to be up front, but there they are, Rob Botterill and the Squamish fellow. Yeah, French name. Herman and Sharon were in Green Party headquarters last night for the evening, so they've got some, I'm sure at Forum, I hope you'll tell us some stories. So finally, let me compare Unitarian values. If we consider that Unitarian values are faith, reason, tolerance, and love for the earth, and I recognize that these are also United Church values, Buddhist values, Anglican values, some Roman Catholic values, what does that mean for Unitarians looking at the new legislature? I learned this morning, very early this morning, that a wether is a Middle English word for a castrated male sheep. And the castrated male sheep would always come back when called. So shepherds would put a bell on the wether. And the bellwether let you know where the flock was, even if you couldn't see the flock. And that's where we get bellwether. One bellwether in this election has been the topic of safe drug supply. The progressive and perhaps Unitarian view is that drug addicts are ill and need to be cared for. Providing clean needles or pure drugs can prevent complicated infections and death. Progressives are not stupid. We see the links, I shouldn't keep saying we, they, progressives, see the links between addiction and petty crime, but also tend not to see jail as a solution. A conservative view seems to be that addicts are criminals and should be locked up. And I heard that a few times last night, including, I believe I heard that in John Rostad's speech. In conclusion, our Unitarian principle belief in the democratic system remains unshaken. I'm glad Lee spoke about the effectiveness of the machines. There was at Surrey Central, someone forgot the password and couldn't unlock the election machine. So that it took 90 minutes for the results to start coming in. I'm not a political scientist, and I suspect that even the professional commentators are struggling this morning. But like you, I can see that we in BC live in interesting times. I look forward to hearing your wisdom during the forum.